Hello and welcome to another Mobalytics video. I am but your humble host Virkayu, and in this video we should be taking a look at the best solo carry ADCs that you can use to climb in Season 10. Now yes, you've all seen the memes, the posts, the Twitters, the Reddits, where everyone is saying, well, if you have a duo with your support, then it's the best role in the game because you can control bottom lane, you control dragon prio, you can rotate and take all the towers, you have someone to actually protect you from the enemy Rengar when he wants to one-shot you all game. But the reality is, without having a duo to play every single game with for all time, you can't really rely on your teams that much, and very often will have to 1v5 to actually carry. And the thing is, ADC isn't really about, that Rengar kinda 1v9 game anymore like the glory days. I mean, as a jungle main, I don't really think of them as the glory days, but Fi put that down and I guarantee you he definitely thinks it was the glory days. But in the current meta and the current way the game works, the laning phase is often determined and limited to how well the supports play the lane. Because many of the champions in the game have dash or burst now, it is much harder for ADCs to survive solo. As such, Riot have tried to alleviate some of that ADC frustration to give them more survivability and do some other changes around the game that would give them more of that solo carry potential. And we did have a misfortune in an earlier video this season that really showed how you could solo carry with her. However, with those nerfs and other changes around the game, she isn't as strong as she used to be, and so we thought we'd have a revised list for the end of Season 10 push to get gold, to get platinum, to get diamond, to get whatever your goals may be. But remember, if you're going to try and solo carry with any of these champions, you do have to have optimized runes and builds. And as I said on one of my own videos the other day, itemization and builds and runes that everyone picks, even with the right champion, makes Odin cry. And yes, that's even through the eye that he doesn't have, because they're so often incorrect, wrong, and not optimized. But don't worry, with the handy Mobalytics desktop app that will auto-import all of these into game for you, now you can focus on how to ADC, last hit, let your support help you in the laning phase, but let Mobalytics support you in the loading screen. Links for the downloads in the description. So yes, that was a long intro, but we're ready to get into the champions. First up is Ezreal. Now you have to accept this. When you play this champion, many players will not want to play with you. Supports don't like supporting Ezreal, junglers don't like ganking for him, but that really shouldn't bother you because you're here to solo carry. He has superior range, doesn't even have to get close to anyone to be able to kill them. And that works out because no one wants to be close to him on his team. Because of the nature of his kit and his scaling, he's probably the most coin flip on this list. He can do a ton of damage if you hit everything and you start stacking the tier and getting your itemization, but he can also equally do absolutely nothing if you don't hit these skill shots. The plus side is that he's super safe, he has his E plus range, doesn't have to rely on his team at all to survive. And that's going to be a crucial trend you're going to see in this video because the more you rely on your team, the more reliant you are on them to play well in order to win. To a degree, you need that in the early game, but if you can survive and play correctly and actually spike really hard in that mid game, you're just a cannon firing Q after Q and it really starts to shred the enemy. Now we mentioned the scaling and that's okay, but it's not a traditional ADC scaling where you can just right click and win the game. And maybe there's something worth noting there. He's not a real classical ADC and that's why he can solo carry. But if you are looking for a more classical ADC that scales even better, has a bit more reliability, and is an absolute bully in the laning phase, let's go to Caitlyn. Unlike Ezreal, who does get slapped around a bit, Caitlyn's range in lane is so hard to match. Just pokes endlessly, whittles you down, hits you with random Qs, and finishes you off with a nice trap combo. Yeah, they removed some of the auto-cancel mechanics early in the season, but the raw numbers buff have really shown her to be such a dominant and irritating thing for other bot lanes to face. Her wave clear is also a big part of this. She can push and trade at the same time, whatever the lane needs. But either way, it keeps her ahead in CS and in control of the lane. With a big enough lead, she can jump quickly into 3 items, get her triple crit, 75% crit and that much AD is absolutely brutal. As someone who likes to play tanks, I kind of tell you how irritating it is. I think, hey, I'm fed, I'm having a good game, I've got 3,000 armor, let me walk up to Caitlyn, oh, I'm dead. And that's because at this point, she basically just right-clicks with her range and wins the game with headshots, her passive, as well as nifty kiting. If you are someone who really does want to go to Valhalla and you really want to, try and sacrifice and defeat her in battle, yeah, she's just gonna net away, headshot you, combo you with a Q or trap, and, you're dead. And that's why she's a great solo carry, because not only can you control the lane, you can also scale very hard, you can take your safety into your own hands, and the damage is absolutely obscene. And I don't use that word lightly, because I really attribute that to Karthus damage, and Caitlyn as well, ugh. Now for all you Season 2 fans, you doublers fans, Yasuos who like to play ADC, this is your traditional curl up in a ball, take a beating, hold out, you're gonna get beat early, but then you win the game later. Just like the old days. But unlike the old days, you don't need a full build, you need 3 items. And popping off means diving around fights, almost basically nuking people, using your condemn very well, in addition to having your ult to allow you to reposition, avoid CC, trip the enemy out, and that insane damage over time, that DPS, is so frustrating and irritating for the enemy team to try and contain. And that's before we even mention things like the shield from Phantom Dancer. And when you add all that together, it's basically not as easy to kill her as it used to be. And saying that, she is still very glass cannon. She still needs her Rage Blade stacks to really get going. She loves to thrive the longer a fight goes on. So if you can chain CC and bury her at the start of the fight, she won't be able to do much. Now if that doesn't happen, she doesn't need her team to kill people, and that's what's very important here. She just needs a little bit of time, a small gap to the targets, the ability to space, ramp up, and she can do it all herself. And honestly, watching a well-played Vayne on your team take off and basically dominate all these fights is really satisfying. And another thing that's really in the plus column for Vayne as a solo carry ADC is objectives. So she's not only great at killing people, but it makes it really easy to take Barons and Dragons in the mid to late game, which is absolutely crucial if your team isn't exactly in position to burn it otherwise. How many times do you have a fight and it's just a huge mess, you have 2 people up, you really could do the Baron because your jungler's alive, but you don't have enough damage, sustain, or percentage damage to really take them out. Vayne does, and so you can, and so you do, and then you win. Now next up is Draven. You're not going to have a list like this without Draven, because even in Season 10, where he is not as strong, he is still running around and killing everyone. What else would you expect from a pit fighter? He is still one of the best at solo carrying the game, and that's because ADC scales so much better with gold than any other role. The game is made for them to eventually just auto take down objectives and get to the Nexus. And people forget that, killing the Nexus, that's what we want to do. Which is why it can feel like for 25 minutes you do nothing and all of a sudden you do damage. So for Draven, farm a little, farm some champions, cash in with your passive, get even more gold, and use a power spike in the mid game to really pop off. And that's what really allows him to solo carry games. Yes, you have almost disgusting damage, but you have no escapes. And honestly, you have the speed up and the disengage, but his kits really one-dimensional in that sense. Obviously, catching up your axes, you have the global ultimate. If you don't get ahead, you're not going to be able to actually be able to solo carry. So it's very important that you use that strong laning phase, that strong mid-game power spike, to get such a big gold lead from that early game that it means you have more AD, lifesteal, and crit than anyone in the game. No one can fight you, no one can tank you, and basically you want to do that thing where you hit one person with an auto, it takes 80% of the HP and then run back to base. And then if you wish, you can yell at the top of your lungs at your screen and smash your desk. Out of happiness. Now you may be surprised to find Lucian on this list because he hasn't exactly had the best and most dominant season. However, after a few buffs, including in 10.16, Lucian can definitely pull some wins out, and let's be honest, when he does win, it's usually by carrying. Very rarely will you have a deadweight Lucian on a winning team who actually did anything useful. Firstly, he's short range. That sucks, but that comes with the extreme ability that you have in your kit and when you combo it with your passive shots correctly. This allows him to kite, dance around, and stay safe. You can't solo carry if you're dead, as they say. However, he is also one of the best early game ADCs. He has way more damage early on than many others in the game, decent wave clear, but great combos or follow-up with supports who know what they're doing. Unlike when we were talking about with Caitlyn and Ezreal who can scale and do well, Lucian, like Draven, needs to get a lead to actually, position himself in a way to control the game tempo. And this goal is why he can outduel almost anyone, and also why he gets chucked into solo lanes a lot. You see a mid Lucian, you're not surprised. You see top lane Lucian, you're not surprised. You see a jungle Lucian, you're surprised, but you're not overly concerned. Maybe a little bit. His scaling isn't bad at all with a crit build, but it's way harder to play with no range and not just auto-attacking, using spells and weaving it in with your mobility. So you really have to use that E to the side or towards someone to fight them, but late game, one mistake, you don't flash like double lift, you get caught out and you die. So much like Draven, you need to get fed and close it in that mid game, or be a mechanical god and, carry anyway, which nullifies the previous point, but very few of us are actually that mechanically good. Now finally, we have Kai'Sa. We have to mention Kai'Sa because the kit literally does everything. You can build AD, AP, attack speed, but how much he can really solo carry in solo queue depends heavily on how much Riot loves her at the moment, or if they need to sell a new Kai'Sa skin. Now, as a lot of people know from my personal channel in Season 8 when she came out, I spammed her in the jungle. I loved it, it was so much fun, but after all that healing nerf from the Q missiles, reducing the amount there are, all the other nerfs over the past couple of years, it really just isn't as good as it used to be. And now, you can be good early game if you pick up a few cheeky kills with a passive, maybe they stick too long around your Q range. If you have a support that can help you apply a few stacks like a Nautilus, that helps even more. But that's not solo carrying because you need the support to help you apply stacks, and that's just ridiculous. However, after that early phase, after that, maybe you get a little bit of luck with your support being someone with hands, you can look after yourself with your stealth and your ultimate. And it's one of the biggest things since she is especially short in range. You can snipe kills, you can assassinate people, especially as AP Kaiser, and I think the best Kaisers also know how to adapt their build to which situation. For example, having burst against something like a Vladimir is extremely useful because when he isn't in the pool and he pops, well, he's dead. He can't sustain when you're dead. Versus understanding when you need to build other sort of variations and items. If you get the W reset because you've built enough AP, then you've got a lot of good poke every time you hit a target, and your passive really amplifies your damage over time. You can build Zhonya's, not get reported, and save yourself against Zeds. Actually, that's one of the best solo carry things about being a bottom laner and playing Kai'Sa, is that eventually when the enemy assassins arrive, Zeds, Rengars, what have you, and they always do, you can build that Zhonya's and survive. For other ADCs, you do have GAs and stopwatches, you can build them. You can also build things like QSS to deal with CC, and I think that's my final cap on this video, is all very well having the best champions in this position that allow you to actually handle yourself despite the ineptitude of your support and the ineptitude of your team, such that you can actually, carry all the games yourself and climb. But all of that can be wasted with cookie cutter itemization and not paying attention to game states and who's fed on the enemy team. Pick that up, use the Mobalytics app if you're not sure, have the right rune sets, and you will be well on your way climbing to reach your goals at the end of Season 10. Well, there you have it, the 6 best ADCs to use on your final push in Season 10. Please don't forget to like, share, and comment if you did enjoy and learn something. Be sure to please subscribe to Mobalytics for all the exciting content coming very soon. Thank you very much for watching. I have been your host Virkayu, and as always, I will see you all in the next video.